Okay. So I just want to set a disclaimer already. If you haven't seen the last vlog we uploaded, I'm in a bit of pain at the moment. I'm still struggling with that. So if I look a bit weird, talk a bit weird, act like I'm in pain, that would be why, because I am. But I really wanted to get this video series started, so that's what I'm doing today. So this video has been kind of a long time coming. If you are new to my channel, then you would not know that I have had 2 babies in the last 2 years. So 2016 and 2017 I gave birth to a baby, 2 different babies, just to make that clear. And a couple of weeks ago was the official 1-year mark where I had not been pregnant for an entire year. It was a pretty big milestone for me, considering that I'd spent the last 2 years of my life thinking of nothing except babies and pregnancies and birth and labor and hospitals, and yeah. So in the past year I haven't really concentrated that much on my own recovery and what I was doing to help that recovery. So I wanted to start this little postpartum series as a way of kind of pushing myself and motivating myself to start to recover fully, and how I'm going to move forward now that I've had both of my children and I do not plan on having any more children. So having a baby in general takes a toll on your body physically and mentally, and having my 2 babies so close together has definitely taken a toll on my body physically and mentally. So this video I'm just going to talk about my specific postpartum recovery pretty much straight after both the babies and both the labors. So I'm just going to go through a few of the topical points that I experienced, and keep in mind that this was my experience. Not everyone experiences postpartum the same way. This was just how I processed it and how I went through it. So I gave birth to my daughter at the start of 2016. If you want to hear more about the actual labor and birth story, I will leave it in the iCards up above. So I'm just going to talk about a few of the emotional and physical key points that I experienced straight after the birth. I was very lucky in the fact that I actually felt a bond straight away with my daughter. There was no sort of doubt that I had this immense amount of love for this little being, and I was honestly quite scared that I wouldn't feel that because I didn't experience pregnancy in a very good way. This feeling lasted for actually a few days after the birth. I was quite lucky. I think it's probably what got me through the hospital stay. So thank you to the hormones for getting me through those days. Baby blues definitely kicked in around about the week mark, I want to say, and yeah, it kicked my ass a bit. I'm a fairly emotional person anyway, and I have experienced depression and anxiety in the past. So I knew that I would probably experience depression and anxiety after birth, considering I also experienced during pregnancy. The baby blues wasn't like a shock to the system, but it definitely got the ball rolling on the whole postpartum depression and anxiety that I did actually experience. The main factors that contributed to my emotional state at this stage was probably just lack of sleep, and the breastfeeding was a big thing for me. If you want to hear more about my breastfeeding journey, I actually talk about it much more in detail in another video, so again, I'll leave it in the iCards up there. Once I stopped breastfeeding, it did ease off a little bit, but I definitely still had that sort of depression and anxiety weighing me down a lot. The postpartum depression kind of peaked at around the 2-month mark. Past this point, I can't really comment on my emotional state when it comes to postpartum, pretty much just because I fell pregnant not long after this with my second baby. I was pregnant. And I can't really differentiate whether or not the emotions I was feeling was to do with postpartum or with actual pregnancy. So let's just say my hormones were doing a bit of a dance, and I don't know which category they fell into. I talk about my pregnancy issues with my second baby a lot in all of my pregnancy update videos, so have a look and you'll see a lot about my pregnancy updates. Physically, after I had my first baby, a lot of things were affected as well. I did have to have stitches. I had a natural tear when I gave birth to my daughter. The actual recovery wasn't too bad. I remember it took about 3 weeks to feel like better about the whole situation down there. It's the worst feeling when you have to go to the toilet for the first time after giving birth, particularly when you have to do a poop. Just gonna throw it out there. Pooping is hard when you've had a baby. But that kind of subsided around the 3-week mark, and I started to feel a little bit better about all of that. And then probably around about the 2-month-ish mark, I remember at my 6-week update, everything was kind of like given the okay, but I reckon it took about 2 months to feel really normal again, I guess. I definitely gained weight during my first pregnancy. I wasn't really thinking that I wasn't going to, and at that stage I wasn't really thinking about it either. It was just like kind of like a, oh yeah, I gained a bit of weight, that happens. And I definitely had stretch marks too, which again I wasn't too like distraught about. As for everything kind of going back to normal menstrual wise, my first period came around about the 2-month mark. And yeah, I can't really comment on whether or not they came back irregular or different, because pretty much after the second cycle, yeah, I got pregnant again. So practice safe sex, people. Okay, so moving on to my second labor and birth and that experience. Whew. Give me a minute. Okay, we're back. So I gave birth in February of 2017 to my son. So it's kind of hard because I feel like with the postpartum depression that I had with my daughter, it kind of merged into a pregnancy anxiety and depression with my son, which pretty much peaked at about the 2-month pregnancy mark. I had an absolute mental breakdown, and the worst part about it was that I hadn't told anyone I was pregnant yet, so I couldn't really explain to anyone why I was feeling this bad. Everyone just kind of related it to being postpartum depressed. They didn't know about that connection as well. So my hormones were literally all over the place, and it didn't make for a very good time, and it was probably one of the most difficult emotional times of my life. So in terms of postpartum depression with this second birth, it was pretty much a given, considering that I was already depressed and already anxious. Basically like taking an already depressed mother of a 1-year-old and then throw in like another baby and some sleep deprivation and just a bunch of hormones and just see what happens. But we were much more prepared for it this time around. Ray was just the best support system I could possibly ever had. He just took over, knew that sleep was my main point in terms of what was going to affect me emotionally, so he tried to help out as much as he possibly could with the sleep. Physically, so I had to get stitches again after this birth. I tore naturally again. Pretty much the same as before. I actually recovered quite quickly this time around, and by the 6-week checkup I was pretty much back to normal. I definitely had not gotten my body back after giving birth to my daughter, so this time around I definitely gained more weight from being pregnant, because I'd already gained weight from the first pregnancy and then just kept gaining weight from the second pregnancy. I also had more stretch marks, and the stretch marks that I had with my daughter were exacerbated. They just looked more obvious. Basically in general my body didn't look or feel like mine still. It just wasn't my body. So this is my body now. As you can see, lots of stretch marks all around here, and on this side I've got some stretch marks around here too. Just a lot of loose skin around here as well, pretty much just from the weight gain and also obviously the weight loss from being pregnant and then not pregnant. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I can't believe I just showed you guys that. My period again returned around the 2-month mark because I did stop breastfeeding. So yeah, 2 months I was back on my normal menstrual cycle, although it was incredibly irregular and has been incredibly irregular since. And not to mention when I had the miscarriage not that long ago, it definitely stuffed it up a bit more, and I am actually going through a few issues there, but that is a different topic for a different video. Hormonally, I was just all over the place. My thyroid levels were so low and my iron levels were low enough that I needed an iron infusion because there was just basically no iron in my system. Everything in my body was pretty much just going haywire because I hadn't recovered from my previous pregnancy, and then I was all of a sudden pregnant again and then going through birth again, so all of my body was just kind of like trying to recuperate from that. My hair fell out in like clumps after a couple of months of giving birth. It was kind of like a build-up because my first birth it didn't really fall out because I got pregnant straight away, so those hormones that help your hair look like it's glowing were kind of coming into play there. So it was almost like 2 years worth of hormones that make your hair fall out all happened at once, and it came out in clumps. And since then my hair hasn't been the same. It's very dry, brittle, I'm going grey as well. I've got a lot of grey hairs that I recently had covered up. And lastly, I had a lot of pelvic floor issues and still do have a lot of pelvic floor issues. I am so thankful that I don't suffer with anything like incontinence or anything that bad. And I definitely didn't have any like pelvic floor misalignments or anything, so I didn't have to go through any physiotherapy after birth for either of my kids, but it's definitely weak. It's a struggle, and I am trying my hardest to do my like Kegel exercises to try and strengthen it. Obviously my body is not going to be the same. I've gone through 2 pregnancies and 2 labors in the space of such a short time that I do not expect my body to be like, oh yeah, cool, we'll just go back to normal now. Physically, I do not feel good. I don't feel like myself. I don't feel like my body is my body. And that's why I wanted to start these videos and start this journey, because 2018 is the first year in a little bit that I will not be either pregnant or giving birth. So that's a big milestone for me. And that means that this year is my year. This is the year for me to get my body back. When I say my body back, I do not mean my body pre-pregnancy with my first daughter. I mean, I want to feel like my body is my body again. I want to have that feeling that I am healthy, I am strong, I am capable of doing things that I want to do. If you are currently pregnant or you are new to being postpartum, please do not take this as the way that you will feel or you will experience this. This is my experience. This is still my experience. I am still going through this. This is the time for me to fully concentrate on myself and my body and move forward with my life. So that ends the first video in the series. I have a lot of other topics that I'm going to be touching on in the coming weeks. Not to mention in the family vlogs, I'll probably be talking a lot about the changes that I'm making and the things that I'm doing. I'm excited to start this new chapter of my life and to bring you guys along for the journey. I hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure you subscribe if you're not already so you don't miss out on any more upcoming videos. And I'll see you guys all next time. Bye! Okay, that was hard.